Back in Bucha, our own James Longman returned to hear from survivors who describe brutal killings carried out by Russian forces who occupied the town for several weeks. And that's where we begin tonight.
As Russian forces move away from Bucha, residents are slowly emerging from their hiding places with stories of terror and pain. Bucha was occupied by the Russian army for over 4 weeks, and there was heavy fighting during that time. But there was a different kind of danger that civilians here had to deal with, the threat from their occupiers. Tonight, ABC News hears further evidence of possible war crimes committed here by Vladimir Putin's army. Mykola was forced to live in the basement of his apartment block as Russian soldiers moved in. And when they arrived, immediate horror.
They made all the men go outside and check their papers. And if they found anything they didn't like, they would shoot them immediately and not ask any questions.
And they were looking for younger men?
Russians shot everyone who was under the age of 50.
You're 53, so you made it by 3 years.
Mykola is desperate to tell us this news, but the mental toll this has taken is clear.
You've told me what's happened. I'd like to know what you feel. You're shaking.
His friends were murdered in front of him, one with a grenade. He had to collect his body parts.
And they've been buried just in the gardens alongside this car. Behind the car here, you can see another grave. And this is a story that's replicated again and again and again here. For every survivor, there's a friend who's been killed.
And this is what Russian soldiers did to these homes.
I don't think there's any better way of showing you just how much civilians have been on the front line of this war. Someone's living room, now a war zone. Russians were squatting here, were living here. They occupied this place, and now it's destroyed.
Across this town today, practically around every corner, we heard appalling stories of casual brutality and murder. Russian soldiers didn't respect age or sex. This mother, sheltering with her children in a cellar, told us a grenade was thrown down towards their bomb shelter. And at the church nearby, an idea of the scale of these horrors.
So we've come to this church here in Bucha, and it was outside this church that satellite imagery picked up what looked like mass graves. And I think this is what they are. You can see maybe 6 or 7 bodies in black bags. There may well be more beneath the earth. And I can see the bodies of people who've just been thrown in as they are, hands and legs poking out of the soil. This town is now one big crime scene.
A crime scene which now needs investigating. We met a team from Human Rights Watch gathering evidence of war crimes.
What have you found in Bucha?
What we've seen so far and what we've heard from residents, what we've been documenting, is really horrific, including reports that Russian forces have pulled people out of their homes, briefly interrogated them, and then executed them.
Alyona from the Red Cross tells us the humanitarian work in Bucha is just getting started. The needs here are huge.
Can you give me a sense of what you've found? What is the humanitarian situation here now?
Humanitarian situation is dire. We have seen extremely vulnerable people, elderly, people with limited mobility, people who are sick, who are alone in their unheated apartments with no electricity, with no running water, with medical needs.
Ukrainian President Zelensky was visibly shaken when he visited Bucha yesterday. Today, he bitterly condemned Russian brutality in his first address to the United Nations Security Council.
They killed entire families, adults and children, and they tried to burn the bodies. The civilians were crushed by tanks while sitting in their cars in the middle of the road, just for their pleasure. They cut off limbs, cut their throats, slashed their throats. Women were raped and killed in front of their children.
Zelensky said the United Nations should be, quote, simply closed if it doesn't act to punish Russia. The Kremlin claims the scenes of corpses in Bucha are staged, but the dead have been here for days, even weeks. The Ukrainian military says this video was shot in early March and shows a cyclist making their way through the streets. A Russian tank can then be seen opening fire. Images released just days ago appeared to show the dead bodies still lying there weeks later. next to the bicycle. City after city has been laid waste by Russian forces with no target off limits. In Mykolaiv in the south, Ukrainian officials released videos showing the moment an ambulance is hit outside a children's hospital. Hundreds of people today were racing to escape the fighting in eastern Ukraine, which is only expected to get worse. More than 11 million Ukrainians have now fled their homes since the Russians invaded. American officials today said the US and its allies would push to get Russia suspended from the United Nations Human Rights Council because of its unrestrained brutality. The US ambassador to the UN spoke of filtration camps, where she said Russian forces are separating families and reportedly making tens of thousands of Ukrainian civilians relocate to Russia.
I do not need to spell out what these so-called filtration camps are reminiscent of. It's chilling, and we cannot look away.
And tonight, a warning from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff about the risks ahead.
The Russian invasion of Ukraine is threatening to undermine not only European peace and stability, but global peace and stability that my parents and a generation of Americans fought so hard to defend.
Certainly, there are implications for the world here. James Longman joins us tonight once again from the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv. James, such devastating eyewitness accounts there. We saw some of the human rights groups working to document the extent of the horror, and it does seem that the Ukrainians there want to tell their stories.
Yeah, Lindsay, I mean, you go to Bucha and just about everywhere you go, people come up to you. They want to tell you what they've seen, what they've heard, how they feel, what they've lost. And it's just heartbreaking. I mean, people take you by the arm. They want to lead you to gardens where the people they know have been buried. They were stuck there for more than 30 days, since almost the very beginning of this invasion. And they were hunkered down. The image I want people at home to understand is people at home afraid to go outside because Russians were there, keeping as quiet as they could. And it was just so traumatic. And now they've got an opportunity to tell their stories. But you know, they feel very strongly that the world needs to hear them. Lindsay.
And that trauma is certainly palpable. President Zelensky warned that there may be even worse atrocities revealed in other parts of the country as the Russian forces pull back.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, if the further north you go from where I am towards Russia, there's a sense that the atrocities could get worse because Russians were in those places for longer. It is a very slow process, demining these areas. Russians, we understand, have moved right back now to Belarus, but it is a slow climb back towards the north of this country, back towards the Russian border. And with every patch of land that is retaken, there is the possibility of discovering more horror. Lindsay.
James, our thanks to you and the work that you're doing.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.